How are you doing today?
Doing wonderful. Thanks for having me. And man, those the in conversations that were going on right there, like I could just change gears and talk about that for like 20 minutes, but I don't want to. But um, I'll just kind of say that, to Dan's point, the line is really graying between engineering and fabrication, or blurring, I should say, between the two. And I've got some really impressive clients that, from an engineering standpoint, are starting to do a higher level of detailed design, more on the MEP side. That's what I focus on. And I won't mention company names, but it was a great kind of quote from a COO from one of those MEP firms. And he said, basically, our feelings were hurt that our models were getting thrown away. And so, because just think of a conceptual model is basically what you know, the uh, the mechanical contractor is thinking of the engineer's model. And so when they were getting that, it was like, yeah, we're not going to use this, and throw it out. So yeah, the CEO said it hurt my feelings. So we started thinking about ways as a company that we could do better, and enhance our deliverables. And does that cost more? Obviously, right? Because you're doing things that you might not do in the past. In some cases they are doing hangers all the way down, but that's pretty extreme. But it's really just finding that sweet spot as far as that value add that you're adding back to the owner at the end of the day, and getting selected on jobs and projects. But there's definitely a learning curve, because going from a design model into a fabrication model, there's definitely some differences. And if people haven't done it before, they just don't know how, right? So
Yeah, I mean, not only are the, building models not getting utilized necessarily. I had a conversation yesterday where it's, our contractors are in some cases asking for PDFs or DWGs, and like you said, not even ever touching the remodel or requesting it at all.
right.
So yeah, it's kind of disheartening. I'll say disheartening for us as people who work so hard on these models and incorporating all of this data into the model, to pull this stuff from Dynamo to, all of these wonderful computational tools and things like that. And then for it to just get tossed to the wayside.
Scott and Dana, may I add something?
Please.
Yeah.
I'll say this, since we've become a software company, I see Europe and Asia really leading the way for this right now. There's much
100%.
more of a collaborative effort to coordinate for the owner versus to coordinate for the individual trade. You also see a lot of big companies becoming vertically integrated as well, because of things like this. I think we're starting to see the importance of it. And there's actually a drive by government standards. If you do submit a digital twin, there are financial benefits for either owner or who, I'm not sure who the money goes to, but there are financial benefits for modeling in BIM, at least as of this last year, out in UK and other places. Singapore is definitely also leading the way, I think. We're getting there. I don't think we're far. I think we're starting to see the benefits. It's always nice to be the second winner anyway, right?
Yeah, let
Yeah.
them work out the kinks
Exactly.
of it, right?
So,
Yeah, I mean, modular over there was a way of life, modular construction and everything. So it was nothing new overseas. It's newer here. So they've got a lot of principles in play, and we're trying to leverage that as a company, at Autodesk, and and how we can do better. And even along the same lines of what's new from a fabrication standpoint. I wasn't really going to talk a whole lot about that. I've got some others that relate to it, but because the topic is so relevant, if we do have design-based content and then we've got fabrication-based content, those are two different things, right? On the design side, I care about CFM, GPM. On the fabrication side, I care about it's a TDC connector or slip and drive connector, and it's galvanized 18 gauge or whatever. So there's key differences between it, but something that is exciting that we're doing and have been working on it for some time is, if you've been using our MEP fabrication tools, you'll know all about the database and all of that, and you're building your content libraries. So we are in pretty advanced beta. It's public, somewhat open, in some capacity, for our fabrication data manager. And so essentially that's taking that fabrication content, so your pipe specs, for example, your valves, et cetera, and putting them in Forge. And so if you think about that from a functionality standpoint, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't make me draw slope piping any better. but you're absolutely correct. It doesn't make you draw slope piping any better. But if you think about like the grand scheme of things, for us to be able to get our content there, it makes it much more accessible. Whether that's on Steve's behalf or Dan's behalf, but it's getting that data in a very accessible location. So from that standpoint, really opens up the doors. And it's kind of like with Revit. I started with Revit Systems 1 in 2005. There wasn't even a pipe tool in the first version of it. But for those that used Revit early on, is like if you used AutoCAD or AutoCAD MEP or something like that, you used it and it was like, man, this is brutal. To me, the first time I used Revit, I felt like I was using Paint, MS Paint. I felt like I didn't have any precision or anything like that. And it was just like insane. But it wasn't long before I was like, I get it. I see that it's not about the 3 tasks I do all day long. It's about start to finish, and I think it would be hard for, extremely valid arguments to say that Revit isn't the best platform for a start to finish type of approach. Now, obviously, are we handing it off into some cloud technologies and some add-ins and partnerships? Of course. But as far as a platform standpoint, that's what we're really excited about to enhance that as well. So to spin that big circle back into my actual presentation, what I'm going to talk about in these next 10 minutes is how we can basically enhance some of the model coordination side of things. So obviously, drawing fabrication parts, sure, that's one aspect of it, but such a big task that falls under us is going to be coordinating this stuff, right? I've got to coordinate my hangers with cable tray and everything else going on through there. So I want to talk a little bit about that because there are some new features as it ties into it. And so BIM Collaborate Pro is going to be one aspect of it. And this is one of those, if I've gotten this question 1,000 times in the past 3 months, but if you didn't know, Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro is essentially BIM 360 design plus coordinate. So it went through a rebranding, Feb 1, as far as making those product changes and things like that, as far as the naming convention goes. But it's essentially that combination of those 2 platforms. And so what that starts to do is enhance our, coordination abilities. We were able to push things through into Navisworks, which we were doing that before from within the cloud, being able to access the models and kind of do some different things with those. So I'll talk about some new things there that's coming into play. And then also, if you hadn't seen those coordination issues or those clash issues that we generate, and any issue for that matter, now has an integration with Revit. And these are a big deal because this was all fixed last week to work in our new platform, our unified platform, and things like that. So from there, just kind of recap a couple additional features, and we'll open up for Q&A, and I'll try to be as quick as I can here. So this is, anytime I talk about model coordination, I kind of lead with this statement. So model coordination, so within BIM 360, Autodesk Construction Cloud, whatever, does not replace Navisworks. That's my awkward pause there. Like, that has to sink in. So because I get brought in, oh, that's Navisworks in the cloud. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So like I put there, think about it. It's a supplemental tool to a Navisworks workflow. It opens up the door for do some things on the front end. It's easier to use than Navisworks. You can learn it quickly and things like that. Just like a protein shake isn't supposed to replace everything you eat all day long. It's supposed to supplement. It adds to it, adds benefits, things like that. So that's one key thing. And the sooner you start looking at it with that lens, the better it becomes for you, because you're not trying to do the exact same things between them. So with that, I'm just going to jump right into it. All right, so I have a project set up in BIM 360. I've got fabrication models with fab parts in there modeled out. You can see I've got wonderful spool sheets, that are incorporated. I have an electrical fabrication model. It's faked, but I've got one to make stuff hit other things, which was my intention. So no different than what you would see in a normal project environment. If you're using, the construction cloud or BIM 360, you're going to have, your storage repository as far as where these files are living. Now, this is kind of a nice we'll say happy sandbox. Everybody's playing in it. We've got the architectural team, civil even threw us, some dirt around so we can put our building in there. But then it starts to break it off, right? And so when we talk about model coordination, it is, if you were unaware, it's just going to be, a module essentially that becomes activated for you. But there's two approaches to it. One being you can essentially have it do some automatic clashing for you based upon, I'll say, a live folder. Now we know nothing in BIM 360 is really live because you have to publish, right? You have to publish something up there, but that's as close as it can get to live. Or what most people were used to, in that VDC role is kind of a snapshot in time, right? At 60%, 50%, 90%, we're going to perform, this clash and run it in there. Now, obviously, there's some that's, like I said, ongoing, but we support both of those workflows, right? Being able to come in and do that, I call it static just to be easy, and I call it live, to make it very clear there. So what I've done is I've set up what are called coordination spaces, and those look at a defined folder location for me. Now, these can be titled anything because, again, this is one giant sandbox. Everybody's playing in it nicely. So even the structural, fabricators can have their own coordination space. And what that's doing is looking into a folder that I've defined in my document management side of things. And you can see my mixings of a little bit of everything else, through time there. So I get to point to where that's going to look to basically, start to aggregate those models for me. And if I were just to kind of drill down, if I looked coordination, I had a folder called VDC, mechanical 90%. And what that's going to do is scan those Revit models. What is very interesting about this is if you haven't seen it before, it will automatically extract the 3D views from these models for us. So if you think about your Navis workflow in Revit, for example, most would have 3D views in their template set up, sheet metal only, piping only, structural only, whatever. And they would export those to NWC files, and then they would aggregate those inside of Navisworks. So this is essentially automating that view creation for you, which is nice. So that way it's already going up there and you've got that control. So it's going to scan these. And again, they're not live. I've copied them over there. That's why they're all V1 for now. So what that's going to look like in our model coordination environment is I'm able to choose what that space is I essentially want to work on, right? And then here's all of those 3D views that are extracted out. So let's say we wanted to do, what's going to hit today? Let's go sheet metal, and we'll go cable tray. So I'm going to pick those two views because that's all there are. There's Revit views, and I'm going to take a look at them. Now, that project doesn't have it set up, but the ideal workflow would be you would have your 3D view set up in your Revit project like level 1 cable tray, level 2 sheet metal, level 3 piping and all that. So that way you can pick those check boxes of those views that aggregate those on a floor by floor level, right? So what that did is it pulled them together for me. That's great. We see them in there. Here's our Forge viewer, fun to look at things inside of, easy to navigate. But what I'm going to do before anything is I'm going to say, hey, I don't want to have to check that box every time, right? I need to be able to pull that up quickly, especially if there was like 6 or 7 of them that I was, again, aggregating together. So if I did cable tray, sheet metal, and you can put notes, descriptions, all that fun stuff. You can make them viewable to everyone else, but I'm just going to leave them private for myself. So again, that's going to be quick and easy to pull up later on. Now, if I look at what this is doing from a clash standpoint, here's our automated clashes that are taking place. Now, it's going to look at a primary model and a secondary model in there. All that's doing is controlling the hierarchy, right? So it's putting from the fab model, which is all ITM content, it's putting the items at that top list. If I were to switch those, that's just making the parent being the electrical, and then I can look at it, okay, let's cable tray, and so on. So it's your control. You can add models after the fact, no big deal. You also have a little bit of filtering we can do. So if I want to say, hey, I want to find every one of my air handlers that's getting hit by something. Now, if you're a Navisworks user, this would be 15 line items on a clash report going down through there. You would have to manually group those together. This does automatically group them, right? So it does have them all spelled out and kind of pulled together. So that's kind of nice that it's doing that.
I'm kind of surprised that it at this point doesn't pull the levels separate from one another.
Yeah, I mean, we get the Ford's viewing, right? So you can slice it up from a viewing standpoint there, but yeah, it needs that you control just like you would that NWC file.
Right. So just like your Navisworks views, right? We're
Yep.
going to just set up our Navisworks or our 3-dimensional views with just what we want to see
Mhm.
in those views. And then those are what gets coordinated across.
And maybe that's vertical. I mean, because obviously 3D views are
The wing of the
easy.
building.
Yeah, it could be a
or what
wing, a
have you.
mechanical room, area A, area B, whatever it needs to be. But yeah, if I looked at those, hey, there's the clashes, we see them. Their goal was to try to go through the center of every air handler with their cable tray apparently, but they even got that incorrect. But we can see, hey, we've got clashes, right? So at this point, there's a couple approaches. Like I could do this high level clashing right here and generate an issue with it and say, hey, this needs to be resolved. Definitely, right? Because we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 or so, air handlers getting hit there. So if I were to create an issue, it's going to categorize it for me, give it a title, HU, and tray. Again,
thinking about what, tying all of these presentations together while we have a minute left.
Yeah.
The bounding box that was talked about with Dynamo, right? Scope boxes was brought up, Ryan, but you could also use bounding boxes to, separate your wings. And
yeah, that could divide them out. Absolutely.
Yeah. Populate values and such. Now, we are super respectful of everybody's time. Scott, thank you so much. That was so awesome. And I'm sure we can find tons of information about this as it comes along. So before you leave us, could you pick a winner? $50. You got a lot on the line.
Yeah, let me go. Participants.
And while you pick, Dan has picked Simon. So congratulations, Simon and Mark, so far. Scott will pick.
Hold on.
Third.
I'm moving my finger up and down the participant list. Touch my screen. Carol Larson.
Okay, there we go. We got to get a girl in there. Well, thank you all, 3 of the presenters, for presenting today. You guys do have their information. This recording will be posted up on LinkedIn. We'll stay on here a few minutes. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than welcome to stay. Thank you all for joining us today on BIM XT Network. All right. So yeah, it looks like we covered pretty much all the questions. Doesn't look like we have anything coming up. But no, I thought, Steve, that was a really wonderful point that you made about Europe, right? The BIM pyramid. And I think that they're actually very, very advanced in this leadership thought on BIM, and not necessarily what we do, but what we should be doing, right?
90% of our customers are in Europe and Asia.
There we go. We go.
And because our tool kind of forces workflows that not everyone's comfortable with here. Hey, Scott, can I ask you a random question? Is Element ID being used to collaborate between these 2 platforms, or what?
Element ID, and it's also doing the SVF loader. So like basically what Navisworks does to make things super lightweight. Okay. So we're doing it kind of both. That's what the object is, but it's still retaining that Element ID. And that's so that's why like we support IFCs in model coordination, but not from all products.
Yeah, because it's not. Yeah,
it's not. When you get it from some of the other programs and it rewrites the IFC, it rewrites the Element ID. It's not a constant GUI.
Yeah, right. Which is always hard to keep consistent, from what I understand. In any program, really. But okay.
Yeah, so that's why like Revit, ArchiCAD, Tekla, and a couple others we support right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, it looks like that's about all we have. Don't forget to fill out your survey. Allison will definitely get that sent out to you guys. You can win a gift card next month. So the chance is not yet over. And congratulations, BIM XT. We've made it a year. Make sure you join our LinkedIn group if you have not already. So thank you all.